Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Thumbs up. Thank you, Cahill. Okay, members, agenda item 1 is apologies. I have not received any. So if there's any from the floor, indicate. Yes, Councillor O'Dowd.
Sorry, thanks, Chair. Yes, there's 2 apologies. One from Councillor McConville Walker and the other one from Councillor Jude Mallon.
No. Okay. Thank you, members. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Unless anybody indicates, we can take them as we go. So we'll move on to the main body of the meeting tonight, which is agenda item 3, the environmental health report. And I'm going to hand over for the first item, which is the decision item, to Elizabeth Rainey.
Thank you, Chair. Decision item for members this evening is a draft response to the Department of Health consultation on a strategic framework to prevent the harm caused by obesity and improve diets and level of physical activity in Northern Ireland. This is a joint report by Environmental Health and by our colleagues in Leisure Services. So you'll see in the report that this really is about supporting and enabling people to improve their health and well-being, which is a key priority for Department of Health. It sets out in the report the link to the appendix, which is the response and the draft response to the Department of Health, where it really is to create the conditions in Northern Ireland which enable and support people to improve their diet, participate in more physical activity and reduce the risk of related harm for those living with overweight and obesity. So the proposal tonight is that members approve the draft response, which is contained in the appendix of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, has anybody any comments they wish to add at this point? If not, I was going to propose, Elizabeth, if possible, having went through it, and there's some great points being made in it, but I felt there was maybe a lack of reference to encouraging a more positive relationship with calories and diet, and less focused on the obesity element and the mental health element as well. So if there was a possibility of even adding in a comment around that, and I would make that a proposal if that's possible. I could have a second. Councillor O'Dowd. Okay, thank you, members. Any other comments anyone wants to make on that? If not, can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Donnelly, Councillor O'Dowd. Okay, thank you, members. Okay. Agenda item 3.2 and 3.3 are information items. Members, I will make the assumption that you've read it, and if you have any questions, you can indicate now. If not, are we happy to continue? Yep. Okay, thank you, members. Agenda item 4 is the environmental services report. I'm going to hand over to Barry. We have 1 decision item and 1 information item.
Thank you, Chair. And just to confuse people, I am actually in the chamber. I'm not online and in the chamber. I'm playing 2 hats tonight. So 4.1, members, you'll understand that when we talked about the memorial benches, I'd mentioned that there had been a number of requests in regards to sculptures, but when I say sculptures, it could be any item, okay? And I said that we would bring back a report. So this is a report before you this evening. So we have had a number of requests to do with council taking responsibility for a number of items that would be, for example, on roadsides, or people are asking for them to go into our parks and open spaces. So really, just to consider those things, we need to think about the maintenance, and there's some information there about the maintenance. Would it be annual maintenance, safety checks, insurance and damage and replacement, land ownership? And again, this relates back to when we had discussed the benches and the memorials. Members had decided that if it wasn't on council land, we wouldn't be looking at that. That would be down to the responsibility of the individual and whoever owned the land. Liability, and again, that just relates to if something was to happen in the sculpture or the item, that someone was hurt, or, as I say, if it was stolen or damaged or something like that. So those are things just to bring to your consideration about any of these. Now, depending on what the item was, those would all be different. So there's a number of options here this evening that I would like you to consider. The first one is that we just say, look, if this is new to council, if you're asking for a new sculpture or a new item to be the responsibility of council, we would just say no. So therefore, that would be it. We wouldn't need to go any further. Option 2 is that we would consider it, but only on lands that are owned by the council. So again, that would be council property, council parks and open spaces, etc. The third option is that we would consider it and bring it to yourselves, no matter if it was on our land or on a third party land. But again, the important bit out of this is that all of those will have a cost implication in relation to what is maintenance of that. You know, if it's cutting round it, you know, a couple of times a year, then that's not a significant cost. If, however, we are liable for it, if it gets damaged or stolen, that could be a considerable cost. So what the proposal is that if members are not going to go for option 1, which is just say, no, we just don't do it, then if they could identify option 2 or 3, and then we will bring back a further report depending on that option to give some more detail about the things that we've identified in relation to the maintenance costs, the liabilities, insurances, and ownership. So really, I'm happy to take any thoughts or questions or comments. It is a big issue, and I wanted to bring it to members and say, this is not just a matter of us saying, yes, that's fine, sure, it's not a big deal, we'll go and do it. There are implications, financial implications and liability implications. So happy to take any thoughts or comments, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Alderman Barry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Barry. And obviously read this report here with interest, and I think it's something that we as members have found over the years when EI schemes have been put in place, that there's always been a question mark in relation to who's responsible for the upkeep of these EI schemes, not just sculptures, but you know, fixtures and fittings such as summer seats and trees and all of that there. And I think I would like to know, Barry, if we have a list of our own sculptures that we are responsible for within the council across the city and borough, because I think personally, before we would make any decision on this, because I think it's a massive decision that would have to be made, but I think we would need to know in-house, first of all, what we ourselves are responsible for, because, you know, when you take a look even at Market Hill there with the entrance at the time when they were getting funding from DAERA and different other government departments, you know, there was the sign of Market Hill and then there was a statue, whatever you want to call it, of a cow. And the question mark is, are we as a council responsible if something happens it, or if somebody drives into it, or if there's repairs required, you know, on small issues like that, but could turn out to be very big issues. So I think I would be interested to know exactly what we're responsible for currently. And that would, in my view, help us to assess or come to a decision in the future as to should we go down the road of option 1, 2, and 3. So I'd be interested to see a list or examples, Barry, in relation to that. And if we don't have that, then I think we would need to go and seek that first before an actual decision could be made as to whatever option we could proceed for, because we're constantly being told, and I'm not being negative in this, but we're constantly being told that, you know, from staff, from officers, that, oh, it's great to get these EI schemes, but then we don't really calculate in the manpower when it comes to maintaining around a lot of these new EI schemes. So like even the one at the bottom of Tandragee at the time when it was done and it was funded by a government department, you know, I was being told by officers that these are all well and good, but, you know, we're not getting any more manpower. We're just here to cut grass, but this is going to take longer than cut grass in relation to the maintenance of a clock and of statues and all of that nature. So I would like to know where we stand, because you're having a working group in the next couple of weeks in relation to trees, right? And who's responsible for cutting trees? Is it DFI or is it council? You know, so I think it goes deeper than this in relation to what statues we have. I know in Armagh City and around the Mall, there's a number of statues that is operated, controlled by council. But what we're asking here, or you're asking here, is us to consider, should we look at third-party statues or sculptures or anything of that nature that people have put in over the years. And to me, that's a big ask until we know our own house, first of all, what we're in control of. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think that's for a comment. Alderman Barry, I'm going to have another 4 speakers actually looking in on this. Alderman Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. By 2018, November 2018, this council passed unanimously a motion that was brought by myself that memorial, or not a memorial, sorry, a tribute be placed to Brian Reid, who's a world championship motorcyclist. And thankfully, Brian's still well alive and taking part in many exhibition events and still getting on the bike now and again. But this council passed that motion, and there's been emails exchanged and documentation exchanged from the family as to how much it will cost, and designs and drawings. But we're 5 years on, and still this hasn't been delivered, even though this council passed a motion unanimously that this was going to be delivered. So I would like an update to be brought to the next committee meeting next month as to what progress has been made, what are the next steps in seeing this delivered in Dromore. After all, I thought council motions, I thought they were meant to be followed through whenever they're passed. This one has just been batted about quite a bit. And I know there was lockdown and all that, but I think this is something that needs to be followed up. And I'm just slightly concerned that any change in policy might impact on this, and maybe other requests that have been made and motions that have been passed. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Rankin. Alderman Moutry.
Thank you, Chair. At the outset, I would want to second the proposal that my colleague Alderman Rankin has made in relation to Dromore. It isn't acceptable that 5 years have passed and there's been nothing brought back to this council chamber. On the topic that we're talking about, I thank you, Barry, for your report at the start, albeit vague in parts, because you referred to statues on council land and then other statues and whatever that could be at roadsides or whatever. I really don't know what you're referring to there, whether someone's had a tragic accident and there's been someone killed at some time and there's, you know, a memorial left there, or what it is. I would urge extreme caution. And as Alderman Barry has said, first of all, I'd like to see an inventory of what is on council property before we even explore anything further than that, because we could open up a real hornet's nest in relation to third party. And I think, you know, this council has plenty to be getting on with, and especially in this party. So I would like, and you know, maybe this is something we need to do in confidential business, but I would like to see a list of property that this council owns and its property that could be referred to, and take it from there. Thank you.
Just on that, and thank you, Alderman Moutry. I'm conscious that Alderman Barry didn't make that a proposal. It seems like a fairly sound way to move forward, because like yourself, I think there's more information needed to help us make the next decision. So, I mean, are you happy to make that a proposal, Alderman Barry?
Yes, I'm happy to propose that, Chairman.
Yes, Chair, thank you for letting me in. And I suppose at the outset, I would want to completely support my two colleagues, Alderman Rankin and Alderman Moutray, in terms of the Brian Reid scenario. And just, I was interested, our vice chairman almost went round the Cusher and the Armagh DEAs in terms of towns. So if you'll forgive me, I'll name check Dromore again. And I suppose my question would be to ask what status the Ferguson tractor has on one of the entrance roads to Dromore. It has been said very often that first impressions matter. And certainly in terms of Dromore, that's one of the main routes into the town. We have a memorial, or whatever you want to call it, to one of the most famous agri inventors the world has ever seen in terms of Harry Ferguson. And I think it behoves us as a community, if not a council, to certainly make sure that that particular site is well kept and maintained. So I would like an investigation as to where that particular site stands in terms of this whole discussion. Thanks, Chair.
If I can summarize what I'm hearing, I would propose then that we would go away and identify all the sculptures. And when I say sculptures, I mean anything that is an object. We identify where it is, and if we know who is responsible for it. I would propose then to let yourselves see that. I would circulate the list to our staff generally, not just in environmental services or in climate sustainability and parks, because my fear would be there'll be some of those, like the cow, that we may or may not even formally know about. So what I would do then is come back with a list of as many of those objects as I can, and with an identification of who is responsible for them. And that will help members understand, is there a gap? Is there ambiguity as there is around the trees? And certainly that would take into consideration, as you say, you know, an object like the tractor, where exactly does it sit at this minute in time? Because we have lots of these things around the borough. And again, I would imagine that if they're sound, no one is actually concerned about who's looking after them. But if anything happened, it would be very useful for us to know, did people think it was us, or do we actually have a responsibility? So I think that's a very sensible thing to do, members. And we will compile as detailed a list as we possibly can to include all those different things. And hopefully that's what members were suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Alderman Greenfield, you're in as the last speaker here.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Barry. I suppose I agree with what you're saying, Barry, but I think we're going to have an awful pile more work brought on for something that I'm really struggling to know how big a problem it is. I was going to ask how many requests have we had and what have we done with them previously, but I see that's slightly different now and we've moved on from it. But I suppose it's just what it was wanting to come in the back of. Councillor McLennan mentioned the Ferguson tractor in Dromore. Someone asked me one day, did it just break down a number of years ago and was left there? So it is something that definitely needs a bit of work done around it. You know, they asked me what happened to the man that drove that tractor there and left it. But I suppose it leads me on to, we're talking about their entrance to their towns, and Barry, I see we've got a wee bit further forward, we still have a lot of old signs up around Banbridge particular with that are absolutely rotten. We've asked for them to be cleaned a number of times. We now have foundations in, and I think it's been through planning, but if we could get an update on when they're coming in. And just back to Alderman Barry's point about when we get these street works and what happens, whatever, very conscious of we've spent a lot of money and it's starting to really look well in the middle of Banbridge. But I had highlighted this before just with some of the officers. We do need to somewhere factor in the budget here of how we're going to keep it looking like this, because it is a lighter material. It's a lot different. And as I work on it, you know, moving forward, we will need to have this hose cleaned, whatever. And I think it's something that is, as we improve our towns, to try and keep it like that. So something that if I could request that we can include into this whole piece of work, that we moving forward, we know that it's not going to be sitting absolutely rotten looking in 2 years' time. So, but it was really just to say about that. I don't know, the bit of work. How many people have requests have we had, and what did we do before we brought this tonight? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Greenfield. And I think that goes to the crux of the matter for a lot of us is, you know, who installed these items, who put the sculptures there, who took responsibility. Do we have responsibility? There's a lot of information I think we could benefit from before we start making those decisions. Sounds like a lot of work, in fairness, like, but you know, that's what we're here for, and we'll go through it when we get it. So members, if you're content, we will defer this until we get the information and then continue the debate. Okay, all agreed. members, we're going to move on to item 4.2, but that's an item for information. If there are no questions relating to the bin collections, I will assume we are happy to note. Yep. Okay. Okay, members, we are now into confidential business. So if you bear with me, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping, then we can work our way through it. What's that? All right. Okay, can I have a proposer and seconder to go into committee? So propose Councillor McElrath, Alderman Greenfield. Okay, members and online viewers, in accordance with Schedule 6 of the Local Government Act, we will now be moving into a confidential session of the council. This means we will be turning off the public feed of the meeting. This will be returned when the meeting is restarted. Can I ask the ICT officers to please turn off the feed and confirm with me when the confidential section of this meeting can proceed? Cheers, thank you. Okay, I just need a proposer and seconder to agree the recommendations in committee. Councillor Dowd, Councillor McClellan, sorry. Okay. Agenda item 6 is correspondence. There are no items as far as I'm aware. And then we have one item of AOB, which strangely doesn't come from a member of this committee. It's from Councillor Nelson to have NA Water or SPB come to this committee to deliver a presentation on the algae issue at Lough Neagh. I assume most people would be happy enough. That being said, for governance, we do need a proposer and a seconder for that, unless anybody has any objections. Councillor Johnson and Councillor O'Dowd. Okay, happy enough, members? Okay, members, I just want to say thank you. We've worked our way through that as well as could be. I know there's a wee bit of work needs to be done in the background, obviously, on a few issues that were raised. But apart from that, just want to wish you all safe home and thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, officers.
Well done, Hillary, she wins.